let's finish with this exercise. If we agree that the 4 number 1 options are Halliburton, Tatum, Ant, and Luka, let's start with ranking the 4 number 1 options. Okay. And then let's work ourselves 5 and then down and see what kind of names we come up with in order here. So why don't you give me your 4 number 1 options in order, see if we agree, and then we'll kind of move on.
Okay. I'd go Luka, Tatum, Ant, Halliburton. That'd be my ranking.
Okay.
How do you feel about that?
Luka, no brainer. I don't even know how anyone would debate it at this point. I think I'd go Ant ahead of Tatum, and then I'd have Halliburton fourth.
Yeah, I think 1 and 4 were immediately clear, and then the debate is 2, 3. And I think I'm giving Tatum a little bit more benefit of the doubt than some of his detractors. And I'm also on the record as saying, look, like there's reason why he still has to ring a certain bell. Because I actually think for him to like really put a lot of stuff to bed about him that people say, and the skeptics and the doubters and the cynicists say about him, he not only has to win the title, I think he has to be the best player on the court in doing it. And I don't think that's a foregone conclusion anymore. Like, a lot of these teams, like if Dallas wins a title, I don't care what Luka shoots, he's going to be the MVP of the finals. We both know that because he's going to impact the game and control the game and set the table for everybody to such an extent. And it's not like this guy's going to average 14 points a game. At worst, he's going to get into the low to mid 20s. And he's going to also basically set the table, control the game. So if Dallas wins it, we know he's going to be the finals MVP. If Minnesota wins it, I'm pretty confident it's going to be Anthony Edwards no matter what. He's going to be the finals because they can't win it if he's not. Anthony Edwards will be the finals MVP. I think Indiana, I don't know. Like Siakam could be the finals MVP. Like if they won it somehow. Like that wouldn't shock me if it was Siakam that could do that. And then for Boston, I think Jaylen Brown could be it. It's not necessarily Tatum. Like that 1-1A, that differential, it's murky now a lot of nights, man. Like who is one, who's 1A? On a given night, I'm saying for Boston. Clearly Tatum's the more accomplished overall player. But Jaylen Brown's been so good over the last couple months of the season, I'm not sure every night necessarily when you watch a particular game, who's the guy. Like you never wonder that when you watch Dallas. You never wonder that when you watch Indiana. You don't really wonder that when you watch Minnesota. We know who those guys are every night. That's not the case necessarily with Boston. So the debate is between Ant and Tatum. And I'm giving Tatum a little bit more benefit of the doubt, man, that I think it's a little bit more consistent with exactly what I'm about to see out of him than maybe what I'm going to see out of Anthony Edwards offensively.
Okay, a lot there, and this will be a good middle part until we get to the non-number 1 options for their teams. I never have a doubt in my head about who the better player is between Tatum and Brown. Never. Okay. And I think sometimes everything you just laid out, is that really a Tatum thing, or is that just the depth of the Celtics that Derek White could have a couple of nights where is this guy the best player on the team? And then we know that he's not. One of the things that I did notice, especially against Miami, is when Hero's on Brown, I think it's a great credit to Tatum that he's okay, well, you're just going to put that guy in jail, Jaylen, and that's what you're going to do. And then Cleveland, one of the things about that matchup before they even had the injuries on the perimeter was just, okay, how are they actually going to match up with these 4 guys? Because there's going to be 2 bad matchups out of all of it. So Cleveland's well, whatever, we'll just have a Coro on Tatum. And then Brown was on Strus, and they go bad. It's so bad in one of those games, they actually switched it and put a Coro on Brown because it was well, this is what they're doing on their offense. So I actually think it's a credit to Tatum to see what the matchups are, and it's going to happen in this series. I think you'll see Tatum have Nesmith. And then when you think of the other perimeter options, is Siakam going to go to Brown? Because you can't really go Nembhard and Halliburton against Brown. Certainly not Halliburton. And the Nembhard size part of it, the TJ McConnell part that we've all fallen in love with and love, but it's completely different against the length of what the Boston perimeter guys are going to be. So TJ's probably up against Drew or Derek White in there. So I wonder if you're going to see some of the same great Jaylen Brown production. I think he was 59% from the floor overall against Cleveland. He just makes these shots that I can't believe that goes in. But I think it's some of the deferential stuff with Tatum that's making people think that he's not as up for this, where I do think it's the best example of kind of playing the game that's in front of him on top of knowing he's still going to get his points. But yeah, we get greedy about it when we start talking about somebody potentially being a top 5 player, where I think Tatum, at least for this season, was just outside of it because of what Brunson did. And then the other 4 that I think are pretty clear, and Luka, Giannis, Jokic, and SGA. So, Tatum, maybe it's a Boston thing, maybe it's the history part of it, but like Tatum's really, really good. And I don't want to be called a hater just because I have the other 5 to 6 guys in front of him most of the time. And I would include Ant in that right now. And the Ant one's totally debatable because we saw what Tatum did in a game 7 against the Sixers last year with 51 points. Like, you can't be just kind of okay and do something like that. So I wonder if we'll get what will be perceived as him not being up for it, when really what he's doing is looking at the Brown matchup that he saw in front of him so many times in the first 2 rounds.
I like that a lot. And I also like the way you were talking about these different matchups, because I've been thinking a lot about that as well. I think you got it right. Nesmith, Tatum, Siakam, Brown, and Halliburton. I think, he's going to be able to be fine guarding Derek White, because you're not going to get in foul trouble guarding Derek White. You got to put Nembhard on Holiday, because Holiday's going to be more bullying you a little bit. And so you can't have Halliburton dealing with that. So you're going to have Nembhard more on him. One of the most fascinating matchups I can't wait to see is going to be, and I just hope, I just hope there's a flat out fist fight 6 minutes in to these guys playing against each other, Peyton Pritchard and TJ McConnell. Like these 2 dudes are 2 of the most competitive, quick, just fiery guys, man. They're about the same size. They're looking each other in the eye, and I just can't wait they're going to be sparks flying off their sneakers. Like, that's how quick these guys are moving against each other. So I think it's almost like you're Missoula. You're like looking down there, because McConnell's been unbelievable. So you see McConnell check in. You're like, oh, Peyton, right now, let's go. We're going to squash this fire right here before it begins. So let's put you in, and let's just let a cage match break out, man. Let everybody watch. And let's just see what happens with those 2. So that's going to be a fascinating component to all of this. I like it. Overall, it sounds like what you just said about Jayson Tatum is in defense of Tatum. Like you're in his corner, man. Like, you're fully.
I'm defending Tatum with I'm defending Tatum with, I think, a very reasonable, tiering of him that I still don't think he's those guys, and that's okay.
Yeah, no, I think that's a perfect summation, man. I think the way you described that is great. Like, there's some stuff that you're realistic about. That's by his own doing. You kind of have these things, like you're kind of holding off to the side, but for the most part, giving him a pat on the back as well for some of the deference in certain situations and some of the things he's accepting because he wants to win. I agree with all of that. Anthony Edwards, to me, if you go back to the very beginning when we first started talking, you said if a lot of dudes had that shooting night, they'd be getting crushed even if they won. All right, let's talk about some of those guys. Jayson Tatum at the top of the list. If Boston wins a game like that and Tatum goes 6 for 24, he's getting absolutely hammered. If that's James Harden, if that's Paul George, right? Those guys are getting crushed despite the fact they won. It's the fact that Ant doesn't have a long track record of games like that in big spots, right? Where you can draw on, because that's Harden and Paul George. Like, let's start listing them.
Basically, it's Harden fans going, if Harden did this, I'm like, look, if Ant does it 10 times in a row in elimination games, you got me.
100% right. And he doesn't have a long list of it, but it was a 6 for 24. They just won it. And right now, they're like the darling team. And he's got this it factor with his personality. He's very direct in his answers to questions, and he's got a joy about him. And so
he's new. He's new. Right now. We're nice to new,
No doubt. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And so, look, I think it sets up, Ryan, I think we're going to have 2 phenomenal series. I don't think, because some of these series have been weird. Obviously, we had some real mismatches early. Boston hasn't been challenged, but one thing I'll say about the Celtics is the 2 times they were remotely in a little bit of warm water. Right? You drop game 2 at home, that's a little bit of warm water. You're like, damn, okay, we lost home court. And you know what they did in both cases? They didn't just win. Especially in the Miami game, they went down there, and I didn't know this was a Star Wars reference. I said it on SportsCenter, and somebody said I used the Star Wars reference. I don't like Star Wars. I didn't watch Star Wars. I'm not a Star Wars guy. I said they squashed the rebellion. I was thinking of it more like in terms of a political thing. Like I was analogous to like an uprising, and like a coup attempt, and like you squash it. And that's what they did in games 3 in both series. They went into game 3 on the road. They said, okay, we're not going to let this build to an anxiety level where now this big thing hanging over our heads. We're going to go in game 3 and we're going to stomp this out right now. So to their credit, yeah, you're right. The competition hasn't been there. Injured teams, not great teams, but they still were tested and their response was impressive in both games. They will be tested, I think, at a much higher level in this series against a team that is much more difficult to guard. And by the way, this is going to be, I think, kind of up-tempo. Both teams like to play fast. And so it's like a Rucker Park, drop the ball, let's go, up and down. There's going to be moments in this series where you go 6 straight minutes, man, of just flow, which is very unusual in the NBA anymore. And I'm looking forward to that because I think it's going to be a little bit of a track meet at times.
You're absolutely right about that. I mean, there's so many Pacers regular season games. I'd be like, wait, when was the last stoppage here? And there was a time when the officiating had changed overnight, and there was a game with them with OKC where I remember watching, and I like to jot a few things down, and I was like, wait, I haven't had any chance to like write anything down. And I go, look at these guys; they're exhausted because they're used to somebody eventually calling a foul on top of the pace that the Pacers like to play with. Okay, just as we finish, we'll make it really quick because we don't have to go into super in depth in this. I just want to pay off a little bit. If we were looking for the 5th best player then out of the remaining 4, does it sound like you're going with Jaylen Brown, or is it Kyrie right now, or is it?
I'd go with Jaylen Brown because I think his overall aggressiveness and importance to their team as a scorer is more critical than Kyrie's, and Kyrie's proven that. Look at Kyrie in this last series, and it was like kind of like, wow, like Kyrie, again, guys getting beat up for playing exactly the same way, and some guys don't. I mean, Kyrie was pretty quiet in terms of shot attempts and impact offensively. Now, I'm giving him a lot of credit. I've been loving on Kyrie big time here for a couple months, man, because I've never seen Kyrie Irving like show me he wants to win as much as he's showing me right now. And he's bought in, he's engaged, he looks happy, he's playing hard defensively. Some of his like strong side to weak side closeouts where he had to run across the court because that was his rotation to run a guy off the line. I never saw Kyrie Irving do that before. So even though his shot attempts are down, he go a whole first quarter and take like 2 shots, and I'm going that, and he's still playing hard. I give him a lot of credit, man. But in terms of just like every night, if you don't get like, I think like a big game out of them, aggressive, offensive-minded game, I think Dallas can survive Kyrie not being that way. I don't think Boston can. I think Jaylen Brown every night's got to play that way. So that's why I would put him as the next guy that I look at and say, okay, I'm pretty confident when I'm penciling in here tonight for Jaylen Brown in terms of production.
Yeah, the Kyrie conversation is always kind of funny because the standard, our expectations were actually so incredibly low for him, despite the incredible talent. Because you were like, oh, wow, he's not disruptive. Oh, my God, he's trying hard. This is great. And he had some incredible closing moments. But you're right. Like, there were moments also in that series. It's like, are you seriously just going to take these first halves off? Like, he did it in the closeout game, too, where it's like, it's cool when you win. It's like, oh, he's getting everybody involved. He's setting the tone. He's playing with pace. And it's like, he's also turning down really good looks. Okay. He's also turning down shots.
You're saying that because I was saying that at times too. Like, I'm tired. Like, it's like, I'm tired of hearing about wow, he's getting guys involved and he's feeling the game. Like, stop.
There were bad basketball decisions in their legs. There just were. And everybody's going to say, right, like, oh, you're just hating on him.
He's a raw scorer. You're a scorer, man. You eat red meat. They throw you a steak and you eat it. That's what you do. And now all of a sudden, you're taking this holistic approach to offense. Come on, man, stop. Like, go attack. So I'm giving him credit for that. The fact that while that was going on, he was playing hard defensively, and he was also not moping, not pouting, like whatever it was. And some of it was his own doing, but some of it was maybe he went 4 minutes and Luka did his thing, and he was kind of like, okay, well, I'm out here. In the past, maybe that's a pouty moment for Kyrie. Who knows? But he's not doing that. That's my point. But I agree with you. You better put that to the side, man, in this next series, because Luka's going to have everything he can deal with this defense. So Kyrie, you're going to, and funny, I thought Anthony Edwards was funny. His interview on TNT after they beat Denver, puts the headset on, is talking back with those guys in the studio. And he said, I got Kyrie in the next series. I don't know if you heard that, but and everybody took that as throwing out the gauntlet, like challenging Kyrie. I didn't take it that way, but he definitely said it in a way that they've talked about that in house. Like, because he was like, yeah, and I know I got to guard Kyrie in the next series. And I was like, okay, just kind of slip that in like a game plan thing. Like and what was interesting to me. So Kyrie, like you can't be quiet in this next series, like for a half. Like you might not shoot well, but you better get him up because Luka's going to need that from you.
Yeah, that would have played out very differently had Game 6 go different, and then all of a sudden it's Game 7 in OKC, where who knows what ends up happening there. But it was like these dueling storylines with Kyrie, and that, hey, isn't this great? And it's like, yeah, a big chunk of it's great, but if you're telling me to actually break down what is happening in some of these games for somebody that is this talented and that is closing as strong as he is, he is passing on great looks, and then that, because they win the series, gets turned into, well, that was just his approach to the whole thing. You're like, all right,
totally
cool.
Agree.
Yeah, because then it means if they lose, then you have to say you still agreed with the approach, which no one would have done. And it's definitely something that I'll be looking at. And if Ant's going to go, cool, you're going to take the first 24 minutes off every night, well, then you're going to get full throttle Ant here to close defensively if you're not going to make me work, because I can see you kind of passing out of decisions. You are incredible. This was even better than I thought it would be, which is, again, not a surprise because you're one of the best, if not the best, to talk hoops with legs. I can't wait to see you breaking all this stuff down with Van Pelt every night. And we'll talk again, hopefully sooner than however long it was the last time we chatted.
Yes, and kudos to Allison and her persistence, man. We made it happen, man. We're both busy guys, and it aligned finally. I'm so glad to do. It's always such a great conversation with you. I appreciate you having me on. I'll definitely catch up with you soon.